Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Anastasiia Petrenko versus Maria Soledad Vargas fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I will try my best to get out there for you guys. I appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far. You can also use the Patreon for betting tips and advice as well, and of course the link will be in the description. Let's get straight into this one though, and this is a bit of a random place to have this fight, but I mean, I'm sure it's nice for the Belgium fans to have some kind of world title action. There's hardly any ever kind of events in Belgium, but Petrenko in this fight is the kind of up and coming name. If you don't know who she is, she's a Ukrainian fighter who's 7-0, who's been kind of tested against on paper contenders in her home country of Ukraine, but it's difficult for fighters to get good matchups out in Ukraine at the moment because, everything that's been going on, and, there's just limited kind of push for, fighters and names from Ukraine, bar, what Usyk's done with his recent event. But it, like I say, just means that it's difficult to get lots of fighters. So it means that you often see debutants fight debutants. And Petrenko, I think, in her first three fights, only fought debutants, and then she took a little bit of a step up and started to try get matchups against other fighters that have got a little bit more professional experience. And again, she's been able to go through that kind of level to the 7 fights in which he's had pretty well. But I think this is a good necessary step up, in my opinion, to fight an experienced former world title challenger here in Vargas. She has fought most of her career at bantamweights, and she's now moving down for this fight. I think she's fought all of her career at bantamweight, and she's now moving down with this opportunity into the super flyweight division. Does that mean that she will stay there? Possibly, but I doubt it. I have a feeling that she probably will want to go up into the bantamweight division. But if this fight is very physically demanding for her, which it could be, then it may convince her to even go down into the flyweight division, or go and just stay in this division, because of course if you go up in weight division there's the risks of fighting even bigger, stronger, more physically demanding type of fighters. And again, this fight will probably say a lot about where she goes next in her career, because I think she does have really good potential. I think there's things that need to be worked on with her, and she definitely needs to show a few more improvements and stuff before she goes into the real big fights in and around the division. But there definitely is good potential there, and I could see with the right kind of, like I say, coaching and improvements made, that she could really go out there and become a very impressive fighter. But again, there's just kind of similar things. But these similar things that I'm seeing from her were similar things in which I've seen from like Mizuki Hiruta not that long ago, when she was first fighting for a world title, just doing a bit too much when you don't really need to. And now of course Hiruta's more recently gone on to become really dominant as a champion and looked really good in her last few fights, where she has just really refined herself and found her perfect style, and it started to work really well. And again, I could see something like that happen with Petrenko. Again, I think there's a lot of potential there, but again, we'll see if this is a step too far at this point in her career. It would have been nice though, kind of like I mentioned, speaking about that Usyk show that was out in Ukraine, that had Anthony Joshua there and everything like that, and it had like Daniel Lapine fighting. It would have been nice to see this fight on that show, just because, again, a world title fight, it would have been the biggest stage for both fighters. Obviously, for the Belgian fans, they're going to enjoy some fights in their country, but, it, like I say, would have been a bigger stage for Petrenko and could have got more attention, and, it would have been nice, in my opinion, to see it on that card. But, of course, we've got it here instead. Vargas is in a different position for this fight than Petrenko. She is only 34, so again, she's had a lot more experience, but she's still only 34, and so there is only a 4-year age difference between the two of them. But she has fought at as low as the atomweight division when she fought for her world title back in 2019 against Bytyqi, who, if you don't know Bytyqi, more recently has had multiple world title fights, fought Tina Ruperich more recently, fought Francesca Hennessy for, I think it was an interim title or a final eliminator. And so again, she's a much more well-known name. And back in 2019, I think she was undefeated at that point. And again, Vargas went in and got a draw against her, which was, a good result for her, but then she didn't really get rewarded with anything off of that. Bytyqi, of course, went on to have a career where she got given lots of opportunities, but Vargas, didn't really get that. She went back out to Mexico and had, I think, 3 fights out in Mexico where she really did step down the level of opposition and, rebuilt, coming off a draw. But she could have easily had that fight remade and, rebuilt. And I mean, even if she loses this one, Bytyqi again has had multiple losses since then. She could have that fight still made with Vargas as a rematch. I think that fight's always going to be there for Vargas, hopefully. But again, I feel like she definitely could have been pushed to then get a world title fight. But again, I think it was just lack of promotion or pushing for Vargas in her career. But not too long after that, about like say 4-5 fights after that Bytyqi draw, she went and took a fight, which was another big fight in the light flyweight division, where she lost to Kim Clavel quite clearly. I mean, she was trying to be competitive in the fight, but the scorecards had it very one-sided in Clavel's favour. But she never did, like say, get another chance at a world title after her draw. She fought Clavel for a silver title, and that was, a risky fight for Vargas to take, I suppose, in that point in her career, with, Clavel being undefeated and being on the rise and being the much bigger name and everything like that. So I hope she did get paid well for it, but Vargas is showing that she will fight anybody. Again, showing that in this fight here, where she doesn't really need to, because, again, post that loss to Clavel, which was, I think, in 2021, she had 2 years out. She had a 2-year break, and now more recently in 2023, 2024, I think she hasn't fought yet in 2020. Oh, I think she fought in 2025, but not yet in 2026. She has been back out in Mexico fighting lower level opponents. So she's been able to find a comfort there, going and fighting them kind of journeywomen type opponents in Mexico, where she's been able to pick up, a comfortable amount of wins. And that's a lot of her resume is that, in the way of, wins. But again, recently she has shown that she can compete to an extent with the higher level of the female kind of divisions. But again, it will be interesting to see how she fares coming up into the super flyweight division, I think for the first time in her career. And again, will it be a big difference? She was quite physically imposing and strong and trying to, push about Clavel in their fights. And it will be interesting to see now coming up in weight, with the age, not in her favour as well, if she will be able to kind of do the same to Petrenko and give her something that she's not used to. I think this could be a kind of last push for Vargas in her career to really go out there and get a big opportunity. Bar, again, like I mentioned, perhaps another Bytyqi fight, which again could definitely happen at some point, even if she loses this one. Petrenko, as a fighter, she's got, typically, when she's at her best early on, she's got a good fast jab. I think she has got faster hands in general, typically early on, than that of Vargas. She picks her punches well. She does a kind of quite nice disguising body shot that she throws, which is like a straight kind of body shot. And I've seen quite a few kind of elite pros do this, where they kind of really swat out the way of the hand blocking the body, and then place that body shot in. It's not really a tremendously powerful punch, but it's quite nice on the eye, and it's something in which I've seen her do a few times, which again is just something random, but again it's very well skilled, shows that she has that experience to do that, and shows that she's been clearly around some good fighters that are doing that. Of course, the Ukraine kind of boxing coaching and style is something in which has always been studied by plenty of fighters through the likes of Usyk and Lomachenko and, various other names as well. And so, if Petrenko's been around any of them kind of names really, then she's going to have learned a lot really. And she can box and move. She can box on the back foot and move quite nicely, to be fair. And her timing isn't awful. And, when she can use and dictate the range and find her range, which she can do typically pretty easily. And like I say, if she can then dictate the range, which will be harder in this fight than what she's probably used to. But if she can do that, then she's, very impressive. She can also use your momentum against you. That's something in which I feel like she's definitely going to need to do in Vargas's fight, because Vargas can come a bit aggressive at times in her combinations, and Petrenko could, really easily walk her onto a punch and then just move off and just, make Vargas miss quite widely. She sets a pretty high tempo Petrenko, which I feel like Vargas is probably going to match, but it's not really something that Petrenko needs to do to set that incredibly high tempo. And I have seen her get tired when she has been doing that, and that's been, in 6 rounders and 8 rounders, into 10 rounders, it's going to be different. And if she is getting a little bit tired with the higher tempo, I think it is worth just not having that high of a tempo. Vargas is an aggressive fighter who's going to throw hard combinations and be competitive and can match a high tempo, but she isn't going to set a high tempo with physical onrushing pressure. So Petrenko really should be boxing and moving for as long as she can in this fight. And she does change levels well, like I say, for the most part. Negatives about her, she can stand toe to toe for too long, which is something which I just don't feel like she needs to do. And when she is doing that, her head is on the line and she can have her chin exposed, kind of leaning back a bit as well. She can also get caught after throwing her combinations, kind of admiring her work a bit too much. She does struggle to kind of slow down physical, like I say, just coming forwards type pressure. She can walk you onto punches, but then, the opponent will just turn around and then come back again. And she can't always stop you just in general from coming in. She's got a weaker guard, in my opinion, and kind of knowing when to throw and knowing when to bring her hands up can be something which, again, is something that can be learned and can be developed. Just that timing of when to, like I say, get them hands up, and, could just mean that she gets caught with a little bit less a bit earlier. She stands quite tall for the most part, which could definitely, mean with her getting caught out with punches, again, with her head on the line. Her hand speed and reactions, again, typically are much better than Vargas's for the most part, but they definitely can slow down. And in a couple of the fights in which I've seen of her, later on in the fight, when she has set quite a high tempo early and her opponent has matched that, into the later round she has slowed a bit, and she can look a lot weaker as a result of that. I mean, her nickname is Strong, and, when she's at her best, she is strong. She's not the most physically strong, but, when she, does get tired, it does definitely look like she's becoming weaker in the fight, and like I said, the hand speed and the reactions do drastically slow. Vargas as a fighter, she pushes you back with her combinations. She's got them kind of hard, aggressive bursts where she is just throwing in bunches and really just putting a lot into her hooks and just kind of throwing hooks. But, it is hard to be able to deal with, and by the fact of her just kind of rushing forward whilst doing that, it really does kind of force you to move back and to, like say, watch out for that. But again, Petrenko could walk her onto a shot and then move off if she's at her best. She puts her all into her hooks, and again, I think actually does throw more powerfully than that of Petrenko. Petrenko has got a couple stoppages to her name so far. I think she's got 4 out of her 7. And, that's not awful, but just from kind of visual look, it does look like Vargas throws more. But of course, Petrenko's coming down from that higher weight division and Vargas is coming up. So again, that could just be weight division difference that I'm seeing there. She has her hands typically higher. I mean, when she's throwing and when she gets tired herself, then the hands do drop, significantly, and there's a lot more gaps then. But for the most part, earlier on, she does have her hands up higher. She's aggressive. She tries to make her fight kind of the fight, I suppose, making that kind of tactic of just trying to force you to fight her fight. She can deal with a high tempo. She punches all over with her hooks, and she's definitely imposing physically her size. Even if she is the smaller fighter, she is going to be trying to lie on you and push you back. And again, it will just be interesting to see how she can manage doing that in this higher weight division. Negatives about her, she's not as fast, anywhere near as fast in my opinion. Again, another reason why I feel like you could see her shots come in and pick her off. She's not got as good a movement, but she is, able to fight whilst going back a bit and, on the back foot a bit. She does struggle to get herself in range and past a jab. Again, the fast jab of Petrenko, if there's a bit of a snap behind this as well, could definitely, nullify her a bit. She's got a poor slow jab herself, so I think mid-range boxing could really just be the play for Petrenko. She's limited with what she can throw well, in my opinion, in the kind of punch variation and output. She will throw all over with her hooks, and her hooks are nice. The way that she twists into them are impressive, but again, the poor jab in my opinion, and the no kind of mixing up of like an uppercut or anything like that, really using the backhand at all, as a straight, again, is just limited in my opinion. She doesn't put on the pressure I feel like her style needs. If she was putting on more forwards, kind of on walking kind of pressure, then I feel like her style would definitely improve, but I think she can get discouraged a bit. But again, if she is fighting a high tempo, she will throw her combinations. She doesn't really have any head movement. She can definitely overswing and become a bit predictable with her punches. She can leave herself in bad spots when finishing her throwing of her combinations. She is flat-footed and she has her hands low when she's throwing, and again, especially into them later rounds as well, as she becomes, a bit more tired and just starts to focus a bit more on her offense more than any kind of defense, really. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Anastasiia Petrenko is going to be able to win via a split decision. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I think if she can box and move and walk her onto punches like I've seen her be able to do in the past, then she can really have success. And I think that success could last into from, the early rounds to the mid rounds. And that could maybe discourage Vargas from coming forwards a bit. But I think Vargas, when she actually starts to neglect her defense of it, I think she'll get caught with punches but just stop caring and then actually just start going toe to toe. And again, if Petrenko does start to slow down in them more championship rounds, which I could definitely see happening, I think Vargas, if she's not been putting on stupid amounts of pressure throughout the whole fight, then she could actually grow into the later rounds a bit more and make it really competitive. I'm gonna, go with Petrenko. I think in close, she does start to go in close a bit too much and toe to toe too much, and that's not going to go in her favour. But I think she's going to pick up enough of the early and mid rounds. And I think the judges are also going to be on her side as well. But I also want her to win this fight if it's a close fight as well, because again, I think it's going to really help with her development and, really help her build and improve as a fighter and show a lot of what she needs to do. And, I think she's got heaps of potential. I just want to see it. And then who she's going to fight next? I mean, Vargas again, if it's a really competitive fight. If not, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if she stays in the super flyweight division or if she goes back up into the bantamweight division. If she goes into the bantamweight division, I basically just listed British names, realizing this as possible opponents for her. But Nina Hughes could be a good fight. Again, she's fought at world title level, but isn't at that level anymore. She got badly beaten in that second fight against Shanika Johnson. That could be a good fight there to be made. Chloe Watson versus Makinen is happening soon on the Harper Dubois undercard, so that could be a good fight there to be made as well. The winner of that to fight for the IBO title, or not Sandy Ryan, or Shannon Ryan is another super flyweight who beat Chloe Watson, and again, that could be a good fight there to be made as well. I know I am just listing British names, but they are, big tests and tough tests, but also names are beatable at this point in her career, Petrenko. But again, it wouldn't surprise me if it's another Mexican type of opponent or somebody like that for her to possibly defend her IBO title. But yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.